Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is part 1 of 2 in the Libraries Helping Immigrants series. Today's topic is free online U.S. citizenship course. The presenters are Andrea Willis and Katie Azevedo, and I am now happy to turn the webinar over to Andrea.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this webinar. Today we'll be taking a look at the USA Learns Citizenship course, which is a free online course that helps immigrants prepare for all aspects of their naturalization interview, which is also known as the citizenship test. The USA Learns Citizenship course can be found within the USA Learns website, which is located at usalearns.org. My name is Andrea Willis, and I'm the Director of Internet and Media Services at the Sacramento County Office of Education in California. My team of programmers and multimedia experts built USA Learns several years ago, and it continues to be our labor of love. I feel very fortunate to be in this job where I've worked for nearly 20 years. And I say that I'm fortunate because how many times in one's career do we have the opportunity to create something amazing that helps more than 11 million people from around the world improve their lives and the lives of their families by providing free education? For me, USA Learns is that project. And it's my hope that by the end of this webinar, you will feel confident about diving in and using USA Learns as a free educational resource to help immigrant patrons in your libraries. Today, I'm also going to be presenting with Katie Azevedo, who works at the Butte County Library here in California, not too terribly far away from my office. And I'm going to go ahead now and let Katie introduce herself and also share a few words about our funders.
Thank you, Andrea. This is Katie, and I am the project coordinator at Butte County Library. I actually started my career in elementary education, teaching in New York, North Carolina, and California. I started with Butte County about 5 years ago in circulation. Thanks to a county grant, I was able to provide broadband services to our rural area at a local farm labor camp in a program I will talk about in a little while. We are very fortunate to have some great funding partners. This Libraries Helping Immigrants webinar is brought to you through a generous pitch and idea grant from IMLS, who also partnered with Sacramento's Office of Education to create USA Learns. Without the support of all of our partners, we would not be able to share this free online resource today or ever. Thank you, Andrea. So get ready to learn all about USA Learns Citizenship class.
Thanks, Katie. So let me give you just a little bit of background information about USA Learns. We originally launched the site in 2008 and with a federal grant, and since that time we've had 1.6 billion with the B web pages viewed on our site. And that's a lot of pages. And we've had 11 million visitors come to our site. And when they come, they stay quite a long time. They're there on an average 25 minutes, and they're there to learn English free and prepare to become US citizens. And every day we have about 9,000 people hitting the server. That's just a couple cubicles down from my office. And I have a team of technical genius people who keep very good care of the website. And I'm proud to share with you that our site has been accessed by every single country in the world, and I think that's just so cool. Oops, let me go back one. Okay, so as I mentioned, USA Learns has been used across the world and very widely used in the United States. Our top states that use USA Learns are Florida, California, Texas, New York, Massachusetts. You're probably not surprised. It's mostly those border states, very popular there. And California, we have our top cities are Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento, and Stockton. So lots of folks using it in many different settings. We have a lot of independent learners, so people who come onto the site without a teacher, they just hear about us from a friend or something, and they arrive and they just start studying on our website. And we also have a lot of adult schools use it, and we're hoping to get more and more libraries on board too. Okay, so here's some exciting and kind of random news, which is when we scheduled this webinar, they said, hey, can you do it November 1st? I said, yeah, sure. Well, today just happens to be the 1-year anniversary of the launch of our new USA Learn Citizenship course. So I thought that was pretty cool. We need to have a little virtual party of some sort, all of us. Okay, so I thought I would share with you some statistics from the citizenship course since it launched. We've had about 110,000 learners come into our site and create an account, and total they've done almost 1 million activities to prepare for US citizenship, which I think that is so cool. Okay, and one thing I'm very, very proud of is I feel like the content that we created in this new course is very high quality. It was developed in partnership with expert adult education, English as a second language teachers, and US civics teachers. We worked with immigration attorneys at the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and they reviewed everything that could have any legal implications for someone because we want to make sure it's very accurate and correct. We also worked with the program specialists, both at the Washington, D.C. office and the Sacramento office of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services program, which I will henceforth call USCIS because it's such a mouthful. Our site also utilizes very high quality resources. We were sure to align with the USCIS adult education, citizenship education content standards and their foundation skills. And we also used some of the USA Learn's best practices. And when I say that, I mean basically when you've had so many people come to your website, you kind of know where they get stuck and what makes it easy for them to navigate and understand instructions and that kind of thing. So we use those same types of best practices in the new course. Okay, so before we dive in, to give you a little tour of the course, I thought it's kind of important for you to have a general understanding of what's on the test. And if you guys were all in the room with me, I'd say, okay, how familiar, who here is extremely familiar with it? We would raise hands, but you're not here. So I'm just gonna act like you're raising your hands and I'm gonna keep going. So one thing that's on the test is, well, first of all, let's imagine that you all are rather new immigrants to the United States, okay? You've been here, I don't know, 5, 6 years, whatever, and you've decided you want to become a citizen. So anyway, so when you go for your naturalization interview, there are some specific things that will happen. And I think for you to kind of appreciate what I'm showing you here in a moment during my tour, I want you to know what's on the test. So let's imagine you've arrived for your interview, you're sitting there in an immigration officer's office. He or she is across the desk from you, and let's say he's going to ask you some questions about the N-400 application for naturalization that you submitted. And in a few minutes here, I'll show you what that is in case you're not familiar with it, but it's basically this 20-page application that you fill out to apply to be a citizen. And they will ask you some questions about those answers that you wrote. So they will be wanting to make sure that you're eligible for citizenship. They want to make sure that you're telling the truth, and they'll be listening for things like discrepancies between what you wrote on your application and what you're telling them there in the interview. They'll be looking for errors in your application. They'll be watching for things like changes in your address or a new workplace. And they'll also be listening to see if you speak and understand English, because that is one of the purposes of this test. Okay, so another part of your interview would be they're going to ask you some US history and civics questions. You'll be asked 10 questions randomly. There is a pool of 100 possible questions you could be asked, and you're going to need to answer 6 of them correctly in order to pass. So I bet many of you are already familiar with the lovely red box of citizenship flashcards that USCIS distributes. They're lovely. So anyway, it's those same questions, but we've put them onto the website. And we've added more multimedia, more comprehension activities, and that kind of thing. Okay, so the next part of the test is you need to be able to read and write in English. So you would be asked to read a sentence out loud and write a sentence in English, and you get 3 chances to read and 3 chances to write. And just to share with you, there is a set list of words that could be on the reading and writing tests. And USCIS has those on their website, and we have them in our course also. So anyway, that is a little background information so that you hopefully have a sense of what is required on the test. Okay, so let's take a little tour. So here we are at usalearns.org. It's our learner homepage. And if this was my first time here, I would click on this big red Start Now button, and that's where learners come to register. And we only ask a few questions. We need their email address and their first name and their last name and a password, and we have them confirm their password just to make sure they got it right. And we do not ask for physical, where you live, anything else that's anything more identifying than just that bit of info that we collect. But I've been to this website about 1 million times, so I'm just going to sign in. Here I am. Okay, so now I'm on my home page, and here we are at the USA Learn Citizenship course. And I would like to start off by showing you the unit menu. So this course is divided into 4 units. They are Steps to Becoming a U.S. Citizen, the N400 Interview Practice, Civics Reading and Writing Practice, and Your Interview and New Citizenship. So let's just take a little tour here. We're going to start off in the first unit. And this unit is divided into 3 lessons. First is Become a U.S. Citizen, followed by the first steps and be prepared. So let's just take a peek. Okay, so here we are on the activity menu. And you see we have these various, it's broken up into several topics here. And this first topic is called Introduction. So, so each of the lessons begins with a video that introduces the topic, and you can click the read text button and have the text there in case some folks would like to follow along. And while we're here, I'm going to point out my 2 favorite buttons in the whole entire course. And I like them because it makes navigating the site very, very simple. My very first favorite button is this simple Next button. If I can arrive to a page on this site and do an activity and click Next and just keep clicking Next until I'm done, I can navigate the whole site without really needing any kind of great computer skills. My second favorite button is this blue button here in the top right corner. Right now it says Activity Menu on it. Right now it says Lesson Menu. Clicking that button will just take you up 1 level, take you, so that you can select, say, a different activity. Okay, so here we are. We have learning goals. We want to make sure people understand what they're supposed to be learning in a lesson. And in this one, for example, you will learn about the reasons to become a U.S. citizen and the requirements for becoming a U.S. citizen. And we have lots and lots of audio. We have listen buttons all over the place. And that's because really that listening practice is so key to this preparing for the interview, because the whole point is we want them to understand what they're hearing and be able to respond and understand what they're being asked and what they're saying. Okay, but I'm not going to click that button because during a webinar I think it might not perform great. It might sound kind of weird to some people on slower connections, so you just get to listen to my voice instead. Okay, so let's just take a little tour. So we've got, this section is Why Become a U.S. Citizen? And so we have a nice little piece on here. It's a little reading activity, and we talk about the fact that as a permanent resident, you have some of the rights of U.S. citizens. However, there are many important reasons to consider becoming a citizen. And here we have a nice video that I will hold off on playing now because it might not play all that great on various connection speeds, but I definitely invite you to come back and check it out later because it's very informative. I think this is great information, not only for your patrons, but also for your staff, because I think it's important that staff feels comfortable with some of the basics of what's in this course, right? And I will share with you just a couple of the reasons to become a citizen that would be played in this video. First of all, you can stay in the United States for the rest of your life. Another, you can reunite your family. United States citizens can help family members get legal status in the United States. So those are just a couple of the things that would be shown in that video. I invite you to check it out. So here's an example of a comprehension question that we have. And if we would have watched the video, we would be more informed, but I think I know the answer. So the question is, what are some benefits of becoming a citizen? One is you can vote. Your younger children can more easily become citizens. You can help family members come to the United States. You can travel with the US passport. I'm going to hit the check button. And notice how I had these 2 stars display here in the bottom, and it says correct. So I got it right on the first time, so I get 2 stars. If my first answer would have been incorrect, I would have had 1 star, and my scores would have reflected that difference. Here's another little piece on am I eligible? Because it's really important for people to know, do I even qualify to apply? Because if you're just straight up not eligible, you probably shouldn't apply right now. So this is an example here of our Learn Keywords activities. We have hundreds of vocabulary words in here because there are a lot of very difficult words that someone could be asked during their interview, and so we want to make sure they know those words. We have an audio file for each one. We have definitions, and we have sample sentences. So here we have naturalization, the process of becoming a citizen. And I want to point out all of these images that you're seeing. I was personally the queen photo searcher for these. We put a lot of emphasis on the images because a lot of these they're difficult concepts, difficult words, and a lot of times an image can really help to convey the message. So you must be at least 18 years old to vote, requirement, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, let's use our lesson menu and go up here to first steps. So here we have our learning goals. And in this lesson, you'll learn about the application for naturalization. You'll learn about how to get help completing the application. We'll learn about fees and how to get help paying for your application, and learn a little bit about the naturalization interview. Okay, so the N400 form, you heard me talking about that earlier. It's the official application that you have to fill out. It's about 20 pages long. It uses a lot of very difficult language. And we have a link here so folks can go straight to the correct one. I've heard of some immigration fraud where people are told to go to a wrong website, and they go and they pay, like $500 or whatever to get the form, and really the form is free. So you want to make sure folks are getting the correct free form. And you need to complete your application, answer all the questions completely and truthfully, and have all of the required documentation. You need to make a copy of it for sure and submit it following all of the instructions. We have a little bit here about the cost. It's not cheap. And we have a link to the USCIS website where they have the amount. I think right now it's about $725. And that lets you basically try taking the test twice. And if you let's say you don't pass it that second time, then you have to pay again. There is some financial assistance available, and this link here links to the USCIS website where they have information about their fee waiver. And here we have some comprehension questions. Okay, so we also want people to be prepared. We want them to know how to study for that naturalization interview. There's lots of great high quality and free resources out there that can help people. USA Learns is one. I invite everyone to that always, right? USCIS website has some amazing materials that I really encourage you to check out, and here's a link to their site. Citizenship and English classes are, definitely something we encourage folks to do. Your local library, of course. And one message that's very important for us is the whole idea of helping people understand if they need to get legal help, because they can get themselves in a whole lot of trouble if they get the wrong kind of help, or if they just are not informed and they don't know what they're doing. So one thing that the immigration attorneys helped us create, and I love this section, It's the red flag question. So there are what are called red flag questions on the form, and basically it means if you answer yes to any of these questions, it may cause you a problem with your naturalization process. And we've created a video that tells folks what those red flag questions are. And for example, did you make trips outside of the United States for more than 6 months? If your answer is yes, you should get some qualified help. Or another example, did you move to another country after you got your green card? Were you supposed to pay child support, but you didn't pay it? One final example, did you vote? Have you ever voted in the US or registered to vote in the US? If your answer is yes to those, you should get some help. Okay, so some comprehension questions follow. Okay, so immigration fraud is a big, big issue. And if you need help with your naturalization application, it's important to get it from qualified sources, like ones that we recommend in here. And we have a great video that I highly recommend. There are some just really terrible scams that immigrants are subjected to. One of them is called the 10-year green card scam. And basically the scammer will tell the person if something like, if you've been in the United States for 10 years or more, you automatically qualify for a green card, but you need to pay me money to process the paperwork. So that is not true. And so we cover that in this video. And there's another one called the telephone scam. And the scammer might call and say something like, I'm from the immigration department and there's a problem with your naturalization application. You need to pay a fee right now using your credit card or your application will be canceled. And USCIS would never call someone. So anyway, there's another one, I won't go into detail, but it targets people with disabled children. Just really terrible. Okay, so let's go to our next unit, the N400 interview practice. And I'll share with you, this unit, in my opinion, is really the shining star of our whole course. You can get online and find lots of places to practice the civics and the history stuff, but the thing that you will really not find is this N400 practice. This stuff is amazing. Not that I'm biased or anything. Okay, so let's check it out. So unit introduction, we have a little overview about the N400 form and what it is. And then you'll recall the N400 form that I talked about. It's 20 pages long, very complicated. And these are the basic topics here that I have listed. They ask a bunch of questions about you, your address, your age, your name, your contact information. It asks questions about employment, school, and travel, and your family, your civic responsibility, and what memberships and associations you've participated in, any illegal activities you've done, and loyalty and the oath. So let's just check out a little bit in here. So civic responsibility, we've got a little section, little intro on that. And in this lesson, we want folks to learn keywords and practice answers for questions about your activities since you became a permanent resident and your status in your native country. All right, so here's one this is an example of a learn new words activity. It's one of the vocabulary words that we teach. The word is claim. That might seem pretty simple, right? But it's a very loaded term. Many people actually flunk their test because they answered this question wrong. And the question is, have you ever claimed to be a US citizen? And hopefully the answer is no, because if they say yes, it means that they have, dishonestly told an official that, yes, I'm a US citizen. So we really want to make sure they understand what claim means. We have some more samples here. Register to vote, vote, hereditary title. You might be asked, do you have or did you ever have a hereditary title? And if you don't know what that is, you're in trouble, right? Nobility. Do you now have or did you ever have an order of nobility? So you can see these are not simple not simple terms. Have you ever been declared legally incompetent? Have you ever been confined to a mental institution? So not easy words, right? We want to make sure people really understand what they're being asked. Okay, let's check out another one here. Memberships and associations. Okay, so let's see some vocabulary about groups. Member, have you ever been a member of any organization? Okay, that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. How about, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? Have you ever been a member of the Communist Party or any other totalitarian party? And I'll share with you one thing I learned. A lot of times people just, they talk to their friends and they tell their friends who are preparing for this test, hey, just say no to all those have you ever been questions, right? So let's say I'm the applicant and I say no to this one. The interviewer might say, okay, well, tell me, what is a totalitarian party? Or what is a communist party? And if I obviously have no idea, the officer is going to know that I'm just saying no to everything. Have you ever been associated with the Communist Party or any other totalitarian party? So you can see, not easy words. Let's see, let's look at war crimes. This is kind of a depressing section, but I'm going to show it to you because it's the real thing. Persecute. Have you ever persecuted any person because of their race, religion, national origin, social group, or political opinion? Were you ever involved in genocide? So these were very interesting images to try to find, right? But we felt they were critical. Okay, so that was a little peek at the N400 section. And I really invite you to dive in, check it out. It's very, I think, very informative. Okay, let's look at civics reading and writing practice, because as you'll recall, one of the things folks need to, one of the things that they need to have some knowledge of US history and civics, and they need to be able to read, write, and speak in English. So let's just look at one of these here. Let's see, how about good old 3.7, the 1800s and Civil War. Got some really nice imagery with these, a bit of reading. We wanted this unit to be more than just memorizing that box of flashcards. So we worked with our experts to try to have very brief history lessons that basically just provide more information than the flashcards, but we also didn't want them to have to read a novel either, right? Civil War, economic, Emancipation Proclamation. That's a peek at it. So we have, I don't remember what this audio file says, but I think it might say economics. Let's see if that's right. Let's see if I'm guessing right. Oh, I guessed wrong. There we go. I only got 1 star that time. That's all right. Okay. We have some beautiful videos we've made. I can't show them to you now. Comprehension questions related to those videos. Tons of listening practice, speaking practice. We even have some practice videos where you can feel like the officer is asking you the question. We also have reading activities where you record your voice, and it's as close as we can get it to being practice for that real interview. And we also have writing activities where it's basically a dictation. You listen to a sentence and you type it, and if you get any of the words wrong, the letters turn red and you can fix it. We actually grade harder than they do on the real interview. Okay, we're going to move on here. All right, so your interview and new citizenship. So one thing that we thought was important, we need to make sure people feel comfortable with the whole process of arriving to the interview, right? Because if you get there and you realize, you don't understand what the security officer is telling you when he says, take off your jacket, or put your keys into the tray, or empty your pockets, or put anything metal, remove anything metal from your pockets. These are some of these are kind of specialized words that you might not learn in your English as a second language class. Step aside. So little info on that. And then we also have We want people to understand directions in the building when they arrive for their interview. They'll arrive at a receptionist desk, and the person might say something like, go to the 10th floor, go down the stairs, the waiting room is on the right, or whatever. And if you don't understand any of those, you're going to be very stressed out and not arrive successfully to your interview. So we have a bit on that. We also have some information about what they do in the waiting room, and we have a self-assessment so they can make sure they learned everything they needed to learn. One thing I learned when working on this project was that people need to be able to speak English. Okay, I knew that part. But the part I didn't realize is the officer starts deciding if you speak English the minute you meet in the hallway. So let's say the officer says, "Hi, nice to meet you. How was the traffic? How's the weather?" Any of that, and you're not able to respond clearly. That kind of shows you don't speak English. So we have a whole piece on small talk about transportation and how's the weather. And we also covered an interesting thing called question tags, where the officer might say something like, "Boy, it's hot out today, isn't it?" And as English learners, you may not know, you just should say, "Yes, it is." So a nice little piece on question tags that we really were pleased with. Okay, starting your interview. You have to be sworn in. If you're not quite sure what some of those words mean, you're going to be in trouble, right? They'll say something like, "Please remain standing, raise your right hand. Please, do you swear or affirm that the statements you will give today will be the truth?" So we give a little piece on swearing in and understanding what the officer is asking of you. And then after the interview, let's imagine your interview went amazingly well and you received notification that yes, you're in. You'll be invited to a ceremony, the naturalization ceremony, which is very exciting.
We are at 32 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. So I think you're going to have extra time to talk because I think I'm going kind of fast, but that's okay. And once you complete your naturalization ceremony, there are some next steps that you would need to follow. You can register to vote, which is very exciting. You can apply for a passport and update your records, like your social security number, all that kind of stuff. You can even sponsor family members, which is huge. And we have nice links on where you can go to learn more about that. I have a nice little video I invite you to check out later called Your New Freedom. And then that's the end of the course. So, but that's not the end of my presentation. Okay, so I included this handful of screen grabs in here of the videos just to give you a little peek at how nice they are. So this is a screen grab from the 10 Reasons to Become a U.S. Citizen. And if you happen to have access to the handouts, I've included the links to these. Okay, this is from the requirements for becoming a U.S. citizen. And from Red Flags. And this is the scammer guy, common immigration fraud guy. Don't do it. Okay, this is from Rights and Responsibilities. Okay, so I just want to chat with you briefly about the teacher side of USA Learns, because it's a really great opportunity, I think, for library staff and volunteers and teachers and whoever wants to help someone learn English. You can go in here and very easily, within like a minute or two, create a course in USA Learns for free. And you don't have to be very knowledgeable about English as a second language. You don't have to be an expert on US citizenship, because basically you're getting yourself a clone of one of our courses that your students can access. So let me give you a little peek at how that works. Okay, so I should have mentioned, hang on, I'm gonna go back. I should have mentioned usalearns.org/teacher. That's where the teacher side is. And if this is my first time here, I'm going to click the register button and complete a brief registration form. And if I already have an account, I would come here to the sign in button. Okay, so here we are. We're going to register. So I enter my email address and my first name and my last name, and we use the term alias, but let's say you want your students to call you Mrs. Smith or whatever, you would put that here, and that's what your students would see. You select your country and your agency type, and I hope you pick library if you're from a library, because I'll share kind of an interesting statistic with you. So we've got about 5,000 or so registered teachers in USA Learns. And I recently asked my programmer, hey, how many people selected library and that agency type field? And I'll let you think for a minute on what the number is you might guess out of 5,000, but the answer was 77. And so anyway, I want more libraries people in there. All right, put your agency name in there, password, and confirm your password. I'm not sure what that ringing is. Okay, so let's see here. This is where I create a class, and this is super easy. So you make up a title for your class. Maybe it's ESL 1 or whatever you want to call it. And then you use this pull down menu to pick a course, one of our 4 courses, and you describe it and you put a start date in there. And I suggest don't put an end date unless you really, really want your course to automatically end. So some people want that, but we get a lot of tech support requests from people who said, why did it end? I said, oh, don't put an end date. Okay, so here we are. I am now logged into the teacher side of USA Learns. And I just point out a couple little things here. I have 3 fake courses in here. And if I were to click on a course name, this nice little box pops up. And that's where I can see my roster and message my students and see some various reports. And this column here is really important too. This is my class key. And what I would do, let's say for this Andrea's demo class, I would take this class key and give it to my learners. And when they're logged into their account, they would then enter that class key in and save. Now your account is magically connected to their account. And it's a lovely and very easy way for you to be able to monitor their progress. And here I am again, I'm still in as a teacher. I had clicked on the button to see the student gradebook for my amazing student, Andrea Willis, one of my fake accounts. And here I can see things like the number of times I attempted an activity, when I completed it, how much time I spent on it, and my scores. So I imagine for reporting purposes, sometimes you guys need to show things like that. So this is one very easy way for you to have some kind of statistics to share. Okay, now we're moving on to a handful of slides that Katie is going to present for us.
Well, thank you, Andrea. So actually, Libraries Helping Immigrants is Andrea's brainchild. We've worked together on another grant that we've named E-Aprende Café Digital, which I'll continue talking about in a minute. Butte County and Sacramento County Office of Education share a wonderful collaborative effort to fulfill these 4 objectives. Again, Libraries Helping Immigrants is the grant that is paying for all of your free participation. We selected 9 pilot libraries throughout California who are learning to utilize USA Learns at all staff levels. With those 9 participants, many of whom are in our listening audience now. Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed. We will offer introductions to other partners who can help provide immediate and professional assistance. We had a question a little while ago about assessing eligibility. If somebody has a question, one of our partners can help define where that red flag might be. And we will have an awareness campaign, which will focus on ways to deliver this information in multiple formats, targeting the ethnic communities of our pilot libraries. Overall, the dream is that at the end of our first year of our grant, these pilot librarians will continue to pay it forward, providing support and mentoring to others across California and perhaps the United States. I first learned about USA Learns at a California Library Association conference when my original grant, Café Digital, was in its infancy. In an effort to provide broadband access to a secluded rural area of our county, I drove this van, on the next slide, to the farm labor camp 4 days a week. I brought hotspots, laptops, and of course support. I was able to guide second language learners in basic computer skills, English improvement, and the naturalization process. I found USA Learns to be truly the best resource out there. I would encourage you, implore you to look at the menu. It's the first lesson I always started with every new learner. Many of the people who came to the camp, primarily women, dedicated their time for such a positive effort. They ended up teaching each other while they were preparing for their own citizenship. The first few months were difficult. I'm going to tell you that right out. The political climate was changing, and don't be offended, I am a white woman. I speak Spanish like a white woman, but I try, and they saw my sincerity, and I would walk up and down the streets of the neighborhood with a megaphone calling out, hay clases gratis, oye, venga, aprende inglés. And children would follow me down the streets. And then the adults would look out and see me, and then they would come to the classroom. I think that it really helped break the ice, and the community had to get used to my silliness and my energy and attendance grew. But I think, good things are worth waiting for. And at this facility, we were able to guide quite a few people with their citizenship efforts. They're voting next week. So patrons were able to drop in at their convenience. The next slide, please.
Okay.
They would participate in online learning, conversation with me, conversation with a small group, whatever best suited their schedules. These are the learning models that we are focusing on with Libraries Helping Immigrants. Conversation group is probably something most of you are familiar with, relatively simple. You give a topic, people discuss that. It's going to be led by some facilitator who is able to basically guide and assist. Drop-in sessions, you come when you come, you don't when you don't. When people came into the Mi Casa, it's a little classroom, when people would come into our room, I would have the online websites set up for them ahead of time. They would come in, and some had never touched a keyboard before. So we went to digitallearn.org, an ALA program, and I would teach them the basic online learning skills so they could become more independent and learner-centered. They would be learning at their own rate and their own understanding. Sometimes learners were surprised by a historical fact or had questions about a given answer. So we were able to take this blended learning idea where we combine conversation, a drop-in session time, online learning to answer and address those. There's something new every day, and offering these different learning models and sessions address all adult learners and their personal goals. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about learning circles. When I was at the farm labor camp, we had a learning circle form practically on its own. This is a lightly facilitated peer learning model. It's something you, a staff member, a volunteer, could organize. I always, thanks to the teacher mode on USA Learns, I always had an idea of where the learners were. They always told me what they wanted to learn, whether it was grammar, vocabulary, conversation. So as the facilitator, I would review the online lessons with them, answer some of their questions or clarify, and then encourage the others in the room to become a maestra, the teacher. They loved that. So in this group, I would have little computers, a little screen that we could show a lesson and go over it together, talk about it, take it a little deeper, and actually help in this circle in a real personal sort of way, enhance the learning of the adults. So I have a question for you. How might you roll out USA Learns in your library? Conversation? Online? What if you showed on the projector the common immigration fraud videos? If you don't have a projector, on your screen. The videos are so spot on. You can discuss the content, answer questions as a regular conversation in a relaxed sort of way. The learning circle idea really covers a lot. Imagine having a practice interview based on the video that you've seen that is truly so expert. I think that all of these interactive learning ideas are really give you a lot of flexibility in the library or wherever it is you hold your group. And the beauty of online instruction is that you're able to address your learners' needs. Again, it's learner-centered, a goal many of us in the library share. On the next page is a quote. Many of you are probably familiar with Jennifer Gagliardi. She wrote the U.S. Citizenship book camp. She said, I, Jennifer, am not aware of another free resource that is this in-depth and prepares applicants for all aspects of the naturalization interview. The combination of reading, writing, listening, and speaking practice makes this course ideal for many levels of citizenship students. We had a quote earlier from Josefina. She did not have computer skills when she started coming into our class. She learned to use USA Learns, preferred practicing it on the computer, asking me questions, talking to our small group. She went after practicing her interview with the computer and me and our friends. She went to her interview totally prepared. She came back to the camp and said, I was so prepared. I knew what to expect. They did exactly what you said they would do.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome. I love that.
Yep. So we would like to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and efforts. And we would like to open to questions and comments. We don't hear voices because you have to type them to us. If you have questions that you would like to address to Andrea or myself, please do. There's tech support, which is a godsend, I will tell you, is so helpful. You'll get all your questions answered, sorry. Andrea, we did have one question, and I'm not sure that
Yeah.
I responded to all, so I'd like to say this
Okay.
again. The person wrote that if the teacher person leading the class is not qualified to answer questions that might come up related to eligibility, could the course just skip that? Could you omit that unit? Yes, absolutely. If it's an area online that you're not comfortable with, it's not a requirement for practice. However, I responded to this person and said, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services page has a beautiful flow chart that'll ask you if, then, if you have lived here this long, if you have done these things, and it will tell you, it outlines your eligibility. So if you don't understand it
Very
in the
good.
program, you can understand it online.
Yes, absolutely. And I will share also, let me see if I can just get there quickly enough here. So we have a nice little section in the citizenship course called Am I Eligible? And we have a whole video on the topic, and I won't share it with you, but it really does. We worked very closely with immigration attorneys on this. So this piece here does give a very nice little overview. And I liked your suggestion, Katie, of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services website also has some really great resources to help.
No. I guess a couple more questions have come up, and I'm sorry to say they're not showing up on my screen.
Okay, I can go ahead and read them out for you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Sure. If we were to offer as a library course, in how many hours could it be completed? Any suggestions for a number of classes and duration?
Let's see here. I don't have an official count, but in chatting with some of my U.S. citizenship adult ed teachers. I think they've mentioned, they think around 40-ish hours. And that's I look forward to talking with more teachers who have used it to get their take on it. But I think that's an okay estimate for the moment.
I would suggest to you also that because it's so independent, you would probably not cover every single page with the way it's done online. For example, on the vocabulary, that could be something that you go through at a different rate than the videos. The videos are, Andrea, help me, 2 to 5
Yeah,
minutes.
I would say somewhere in there. Yeah.
And so you can really get a lot done by focusing on that. And again, when you know your learner, you're able to truly address your learner's needs and wants based on the units and the way. Something that helped me a lot is that lesson menu. When I started with any new participant, I would explain what each of these sections mean. So if I'm going through become a citizen, I tell them that little icon means video. That little blue box means it's complete. Their score, I pat their back. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that that's a
that's
good
good.
piece too.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
is good. The other thing related to the question of how long does it take to teach this, it really largely depends on the English level of the learner. Someone who is a lower level English learner is going to take a lot longer to go through this than say someone who, is, high intermediate or something like that.
Good point. Good point.
And another question about time. What is the typical length of time that it becomes to become an American citizen from beginning to successful end?
Ah, wow.
Who's the
That's a
politician with
good
that
one.
question?
That's a good one. I do not know the answer to that question, unfortunately.
I can tell you that according to our USCIS representative, who is in Northern California, it can take anything from 3 months to a couple years. So much depends on the number of applications received by the office. It depends on where you are, actually. If you're submitting into Sacramento, it's different if you're submitting into Los Angeles because of sheer volume, and it really
Right.
does make a difference that way. And I think that's a really good question. The person who asked that, I would highly recommend you contact your citizenship advocate through USCIS and ask that question because applications get lost. And what our person told me at one point is if you have not heard back within 1 year, you need to follow up again and advocate for your application. Something to consider.
Yeah, that's a great point, Katie.
And do you have such a resource for Spanish-speaking citizenship candidates?
Oh, I wish I did. That would be so wonderful, wouldn't it? Right now we have it in English, but I do get quite a lot of requests to have a Spanish version of this, and so stay tuned. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll be able to build something like that. That would be great.
And is it possible to use this as online training only? We do not have the staff to support holding classes.
Absolutely. I mean, our largest group of users are what we call independent learners, where they go to our homepage and they create an account and they just study independently. And you do not need a teacher to use this. It's great if you have a teacher, but yeah, tons and tons of people use this independently. And I would, I mean, if your library ever, is in the position where you say you have classes, but they're full and you have a wait list, this is a great resource. You can refer folks to this, and they can be, they can be studying independently while they're waiting for a spot to open up in your class.
And someone is saying they have a limited Spanish language skill and they would like some ideas about how they might learn the comparable vocabulary or phrases in Spanish.
I can
Oh,
address that one.
go ahead.
So I highly recommend, again, that person goes to the uscis.gov website. The lessons are in Spanish on that page. They have everything translated. And for the pertinent I will tell you, when I had to describe genocide in my feeble
Mhm.
Spanish, I was appropriately
Uh,
challenged. And
yeah.
so I understand this question. I think that it's really important. Most applicants are required to take the test and the interview in English. It's the 25, 50, 2055 thing going on that makes an exception. And so I would encourage your learners to consider the English piece for their peace of mind when they get into that interview.
A good suggestion, Katie.
And we have another question. Are spouses of American citizens required to fill out the N400 application?
You know,
Yes.
I'll share with you, I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to pass on answering that one.
Well, I think that's fair, but if you, again, go on to the immigration website, it will tell you anybody who's applying for citizenship completes the N400.
I'm not seeing any other questions right now.
All right.
Oh, we got one more. Here we go.
Did we get one? All right. What you got?
I'm a librarian assistant. Can my coworker and I hold the class? If so, how can we get grants to fund this program?
Yeah. Write a creative story.
That's right.
So if that person is in California, of course, the California State Library has grant opportunities. If you're looking for support with the broadband access, the California Public Utilities has grants that are available. It's kind of like looking for a new recipe. You just have to start asking a lot of questions and follow the advice that you get. I know that Andrea was extremely prepared and spot on with this grant. Our state librarian is very keen on supporting immigrant support.
Unfortunately, this person is in Connecticut.
Oh.
Oh, I don't think that's so unfortunate. I'd like to be in Connecticut.
Well,
I don't know your state librarian, but I do think that would be a good place to start is your state library and your representative. Your elected representatives have a lot of opportunity to help fund things like that.
is there an app or is it only online?
Oh, I can answer that question. So we have an app for our English courses. It's not actually related to the citizenship course, but if you tune into an upcoming webinar that we'll be doing, we'll be chatting more about that. But the USA Learns English app is something that goes along with our beginning English course, and it's for practicing your vocabulary words. So there's not an app for this, but I do have a separate app for
November 14th, 12 o'clock, my friends. November 14th. Put us on your calendar.
That's right. We'd love to have you join us.
Okay, and here comes another question. Do you have any tips on recruiting students/participants?
In addition to the megaphone, walking
I know, Katie's megaphone. It's hard to beat that, right?
That was a good one.
I can only imagine how I looked. From my point of view, from the library, it is truly reaching out person to person and I did go door to door. The camp is relatively small for that grant. Now, community centers, adult learning centers, junior colleges, community colleges. We have a junior college in our area that is very supportive and of people of second language learners, and they make a huge effort to get people to have this access. And I think it really just takes a sincere smile saying, please join us. We have this great program we want to share with you.
And if you have social media opportunities, that's another good way to get out to folks.
And someone had asked about the November 14th webinar and how it will be different. Do you want to describe that one?
Yeah. So in this one, we were talking specifically about the citizenship course. And in the upcoming webinar, we'll be talking more about the English as a second language courses that we offer on USA Learns.
So between now and then, everybody can practice online with
That's
setting
right.
up their accounts and email us questions ahead of time, and we will be able to address things that they're curious about.
That's right.
And I put the link for the upcoming webinar, and they'll see it in their questions box. So
thank you.
Uh-huh.
Oh, good job. Thank you.
And it looks like those are all the questions we have. So we're right at the top of the hour, so great timing. Thank you so much, you two. That was excellent.
Thank you all for having
Thank you,
us. Thanks for
everybody.
joining us.
Yeah.